Welcome to the 2024 Phish Studies Conference video archive. The Mockingbird Foundation is thrilled and proud to present this groundbreaking video series on our YouTube channel. It continues our tradition of celebrating music education. Since 1996, we have been an all-volunteer nonprofit organization dedicated to broadening access to educational opportunities for youth in music and the musical arts. Please visit mbird.org to donate today.
All right, everybody, thank you so much for your patience, and welcome to the 10:45 a.m. session on Saturday, titled, and let me see if I can pronounce this correctly, Now It's Starting to Feel Good! Music, health, and creativity. My name is RJ Wanyu, and I'm an assistant professor of music theory out at Appalachian State University in Boone, North Carolina. And I'm extremely excited to be moderating this panel as a number of my research interests have some really interesting and seemingly productive intersections with much of the work that's going to be presented today. So really looking forward to a fruitful and productive session. We have 4 presenters today in this session, and the first presenter is David Rosen. David Rosen is a postdoctoral research fellow at the Center for Psychedelic and Consciousness Research at Johns Hopkins University, where he is investigating the role of music in psychedelic experiences. He is a lifelong musician, both bass and piano, and flow states ensuing from improvisation, both as a listener and performer, serve as the inspiration for his cognitive neuroscience research on the topic. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming, excellent timing for the downbeat, please join me in welcoming David Rosen.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that warm introduction. Hello, Phish Studies Conference 2024, the best interdisciplinary academic conference for the best band in the entire world. It's awesome to be back here. Thanks, Stephanie and the whole committee for the technical snafus and putting it all together so I could be here today because I just wasn't able to make the trip out. As mentioned, I'm a postdoctoral researcher fellow at the Center for Psychedelic and Consciousness Research at Johns Hopkins, where primarily I'm investigating the role of music in psychedelic experiences, along with my advisor and the director of the center, Fred Barrett. So many of you may have heard of the CPCR at Hopkins as being a leading research institution in terms of clinical trials for psilocybin with regard to major depressive disorder, anxiety, PTSD, Alzheimer's, Lyme disease, OCD, and also those experiencing severe pain. But in this research, we're actually working with healthy participants, and we're investigating the role of autobiographically-salient music in psychedelic experiences, and we're looking at healthy participants. My research background is in music cognition. So last time I presented here in 2019, I was presenting on the neural correlates of creativity and creative flow during jazz improvisation. I have extensive experience improvising as a musician and also researching both the music preference side of things and music performance side in terms of the neuroscience and psychological underpinnings of those phenomenon. And to me, there's a common thread there between psychedelics and improvisation in that they can both lead to wildly altered states of consciousness. And it was ultimately this fascination between the two of altered states of consciousness that led me to join the CPCR at Hopkins last summer to look at the interplay between music and the psychedelic experience. So a little bit of Dave Phish background, just to humor you. Phish runs through my veins. The band's been in my DNA since I was 16 years old. These 4 guys from Vermont and the community that they have built has had a crazy impact just like on my personal life, my creative life, and now my professional life. And I could probably spend this whole 20-minute talk just telling you all these different influences and impacts it's had on my life, but then we wouldn't get to the research. Out of these pictures, I'd like to highlight one special one. You'll see me with John Fishman. He was in Philadelphia where I'm based at, I think it was a Bernie rally. And I had this little toy worm, and I asked him if he would be willing to get on the back of the worm again, such as referenced in the Amsterdam '97 shows. His security guards wouldn't let him get back on the worm. Gamehenge, New Year's Eve. On December 29th, 2023, my friends and I were in a text chat. And as always, we were pointing out that no Gamehenge songs have been played. We'd kind of been chasing the Gamehenge show for over 20 years. For me, it was over 238 shows. I texted, they're going to do it. And my buddy Rosner pictured up there in the top right said, no way, dude, not in a million years. That night, I bought a ticket, and then it happened. What I would consider the peak psychedelic music experience of my entire life. The set was filled with a lot of me just shouting, oh my God, this is happening. I can't believe this is happening. It was the show unfolding before my eyes I'd waited my entire life for. The fully produced, perfectly executed live version of Gamehenge. And I got to see it with friends that I discovered the band with back when I was 16. And they were the first two people I'd ever jammed with. It was truly a perfect night. I never thought I would ask this question. Is Phish psychedelic? It wasn't too long after that show where I saw a tweet pop up and a complaint about there being too much Phish on the playlist. This was listed as an official complaint of the Oregon Psilocybin program. They said the facilitator was responsible for creating the playlist and managing the music during the journey and mentioned something about his personal intentions in preparing it for us. However, during the administration session, I experienced a great deal of discomfort related to the music that was played, especially concert recordings from several different jam bands with loud lyrics tracks that lasted 5 to 15 minutes. So, maybe Phish and jamming isn't psychedelic for everyone, and it actually leads to a negative response. So in this work, what I'm looking to uncover is how much of Phish's music, what is it about the music that may be psychedelic or the experience, and how much about the experience is tied to my own and others' sense of autobiographical salience or identity or memories built around their previous experiences with the band. So first, I want to define autobiographically salient music. It's music that evokes a strong, vivid memory of a period, a place, a person, or an event in the past that is of particular importance. So a few things I was thinking about: memories from past shows, the friendships that have been cultivated through those shows, my own personal identity as a Phish fan, discovering the band over many years, discovering the art of improvisation, naming my daughter Ruby, improvising and studying improv, are all underlying what led to this peak psychedelic experience on New Year's Eve that can't easily be discounted. So is Phish's music psychedelic? Some questions I want you to have in the back of your mind and we'll return to at the end of the talk. For who? In what contexts? Which aspects? Which are they songs, jams? What types of jams? Are there certain common features of the music itself that make it more psychedelic than other moments? Also, what type of psychedelic experience does Phish's music serve? Is it a specific type, or is it wildly different for different people? And ultimately, does Phish promote mind expansion and or spiritual growth? This is critically important because it's core to what psychedelics mean or how it's defined. The word can be broken down. Psychedelics derive from two Greek words: psyche, meaning mind or soul, and delos, meaning manifest or reveal. Ultimately, the term was coined by British psychiatrist Humphrey Osmond in 1956 during his correspondence with writer Aldous Huxley. Osmond suggested the term to describe substances that enhance or expand consciousness. And so the term psychedelic has been used since the 50s to characterize these altered states of consciousness, which also are accompanied by enhanced sensory perception, emotional intensity, and introspective insights. Today, I'll be talking about the classic psychedelics, and the experiments that we're running will be focused on psilocybin or magic mushrooms. There are other psychedelics that fall under the category of classic psychedelics because ultimately they're serotonin 2A agonists or 5-HT2A agonists, LSD, ayahuasca, and also DMT, also referred to as a spirit molecule. In terms of the history of music and psychedelics, it goes back thousands of years to ancient Icaros, which are a fascinating and the first recorded example of music incorporated into the psychedelic experience, and they still occur today within the context of Amazonian shamanistic rituals. These are magic songs, and are considered to be powerful tools for navigating the spiritual and the psychological realms that are opened up by ayahuasca experiences. Icaros are thought to have healing properties and are still used to guide participants to this day through journeys to protect them from negative energies and facilitate communication with spiritual entities. However, when most of us think about music and psychedelics, we immediately think of the 1960s and the psychedelic era, right? Pop culture. We think of the summer of 67, the summer of love, and music festivals like the Monterey Pop Festival and Woodstock, which were emblematic of the psychedelic experience. We think of bands like the Grateful Dead, the Doors, the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, Pink Floyd, and many others. This period marked the explosion of psychedelic culture in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury as the epicenter of that. This psychedelic cultural era also overlapped with the tail end of the first wave of psychedelic research, which was being conducted around the world. So this first wave of early research lacked the same scientific control of modern studies, and many of them failed to meet the ethical standards that we have today in research and clinical trials. Most of the studies investigating music and psychedelics also focused on LSD. However, the import of music during the psychedelic experience could not be denied. The presence of music was much preferred to its absence, as rated by patient preference and treatment results. And this quote from the 1972 Bonnie and Pankey paper, I think really resonates with me. With the music being played all the time, not only did this carry one into the vortex or into a liquid, depersonalized state, but it also played its own tricks. As the music moved wherever the imagination went, the image mirrored the imagination. Thus, if one wanted to be strung out on a note, one could move along on a great panorama for this one single note, changing color and texture. In this early work, they outlined the phases of a psychedelic experiences and the type of music features that might best accompany each of those phases. I'll give you a few examples. So during onset, they suggest calm, reassuring music with regular rhythms and a strong melody. As they're building to the peak, more longer flowing phrases and shifting between instrumental and vocal music with forward movement and dynamic crescendos. During peak intensity, powerfully emotional music. It's up to the guide or the person who is facilitating the session to actually choose the music based on the patient's psychological state at that given point in time. And as re-entry happens or post-peak, more quiet, peaceful music that is lighter or more familiar with some of those suggestions. Now, while these weren't empirically tested, a lot of these guidelines made their way into current playlists that are used for sessions, psychedelic-assisted therapy sessions at Hopkins and elsewhere. More recently, we've seen a new wave of research. After the war on drugs led to classic psychedelics becoming a Schedule I drug in 1970, research halted for 36 years. The beginning of the Renaissance was in 2006 at Hopkins by Roland Griffith's study, Psilocybin Can Occasion Mystical Type Experiences, having substantial and sustained personal meaning and spiritual significance. There's also been quite a bit of research looking into the effects of the biological basis of music and how it interacts with LSD. Psychedelics have been shown to not only alter the processing of the brain to acoustic features of the music, but also the emotional and psychological response. Some of the studies have shown that personally meaningful music compared to music that was on standardized playlists more strongly engages somatosensory brain regions and regions involved in memory and self-referential processing under LSD. Another study demonstrated that music increased the coupling of memory-related brain areas with visual cortex. A lot of the time when you close your eyes and listen to music, people report having profound imagery while listening to music. While these studies were mostly conducted with LSD, the underlying mechanisms psychopharmacologically are very similar with psilocybin and are thought to have similar underlying experiences, but that's yet to be shown. Our study is testing healthy individuals, and we follow the same basic framework and standard use of care that they use in clinical trials. There's intense screening, there's preparation and meeting with the facilitators and guides, there's sessions, there's multiple follow-up integration sessions so people can make sense of their experiences, and ultimately a follow-up. However, in the current paradigm, all participants get the same standardized playlist, usually either the Johns Hopkins classical playlist or a slightly newer playlist called the Johns Hopkins Overtone playlist. Music is almost always played during these sessions across clinical populations. It's often the only external stimulus that people have as they wear a blindfold in this setting. Participants report an enduring change in their relationship with music, citing that listening to music that they heard during their psychedelic assisted therapy sessions helps them rekindle those feelings and intentions and insights that they gained during therapy. So what's the point here? Ultimately, the PROMISE study stands for psychedelics and the role of music in set and setting. And our goal is to write the Helping Friendly book, or the white paper, for a new music selection protocol to deliver personally relevant, autobiographically salient music, which will lead to enhanced outcomes, both acute subjectively and enduring outcomes in healthy first populations, and then to test it upon clinical populations. So what we're asking in this line of research is, does personally relevant, autobiographically salient music enhance the acute and enduring effects of psychedelic experiences compared to standardized playlists? Also, what does that effect look like in brain activity and physiology? So now I'm going to go over kind of there's two studies that one is underway. The first one, the pilot, and then we have a protocol that's submitted for a psilocybin study. So I'm going to take you through those, and then I'll leave some time for questions and answers. So the PROMISE pilot is a non-drug study, and we're looking at 30 healthy participants. This is really a sandbox to test how all different types of music move emotion, mood, and memory. A lot of this is also to get our technical chops up to speed. The sessions require EEG. We monitor respiration, heart rate, electrodermal activity, and collect a number of different surveys. So there's a lot involved in really trying to nail things down before the drug study. Our main objective, again, is to determine how personally relevant music compares to these different types of playlists. Here are listed a number of different data points that we'll be looking at. The emotional responses to music, EEG, as I mentioned, psychophysiological data, quantitative analysis of the music itself that they're listening to, acute subjective effects, which I'll cover in a moment, memories and the types of memories elicited during these experiments, and then finally the enduring effects and the long-term outcomes. So we have 30 people in the study. All participants will get 2 music conditions, no matter who they are. That's the autobiographically salient music. So we cultivate a playlist for them based on some participant information regarding artists, songs, and albums that are the most autobiographically salient to them. And then the other 2 conditions are really randomized between all these different people. About 10 people will get in each. We're looking at a world music playlist, the overtones playlist, which I mentioned previously, a playlist of nature sounds, psychedelic classic rock, a sound healer who uses music for music therapy, and ambient electronica. This is how the study is designed. As I mentioned, it follows the protocol and the standard of care of a psychedelic session, except it's condensed a bit because those sessions last about 8 hours, and our sessions are about 3 because it's non-drug for the pilot. So there's a screening. That's where we get the data. There's a preparation session. People come in, they get hooked up to everything, they get used to the environment, blindfolded, listen to a little music. So they're prepared for 4 sessions. I kind of just went over what those music conditions were. They come in for those 4 sessions, take some surveys, listen to music, respond to some surveys afterwards. There's a couple of follow-ups 1 day and 1 week after each session. And at the end, there's a final qualitative interview with to describe kind of their experience throughout the study. The types of acute measures that we're looking at include mystical experiences, such as a sense of time being distorted or amazement, the level of challenging experiences participants had, the 5-dimension altered states of consciousness, which looks at different facets of altered states of consciousness, like being connected to a higher power or visual hallucinations, awe, or inner peace, psychological insights that they may have had during the session, their emotional response to the music, and the level of flow that they were experiencing within the sessions. In the 1 day and 1 week follow-ups, we're asking them about kind of more different aspects of their mood. So state and trait anxiety, depression, stress and anxiety, positive and negative affect, dispositional positive emotional scale, again, another kind of just measure of mood, profile of mood states, and behavioral inhibition and activation. And these are all metrics that are collected in almost all of the different psychedelic studies that happen at Hopkins. So that's the pilot we're running now. We've completed 6 participants on our way. We've begun about half of them have already had their first session, and we're expecting that data collection to wrap up in the fall. Now we're submitting our protocol for a study 2, which is a high-dose psilocybin and music study. We'll be delivering 25 milligrams of psilocybin to participants. It'll be open label, so everyone knows they come in for 1 session. There'll be 96 participants, and they'll be hearing different types four different conditions of music, one being autobiographical salient music, one being the Johns Hopkins classical playlist. And then depending on the results of the pilot, we're going to select the other two conditions based on what we're seeing there as being emotionally moving and memory evoking. That design is similar to the one I just mentioned with a couple of kind of important differences. So the screening for psychedelic studies is quite more intense. So we collect information about medical and psychological health. We look for family history in terms of any psychosis previously in their family, because that would disqualify them. And those are pretty strict standards set forth by for any of these centers who are running psychedelic studies due to the nature of potential dangers of and interactions with certain backgrounds. We'll also be adding fMRI to this study. So we're looking at baseline fMRI in addition to the EEG that we collect during the sessions. So we'll get baseline fMRI and fMRI at the 1 week follow-up point after each session. And then at the very end of the experiment, we'll be tacking on a long-term follow-up where half of the participants hear the music that they had in their psychedelic session and half the participants hear other music to see what happens when you re-listen to the music that you listened to while you were tripping, but this time you're not. And what happens at that point, because that really hasn't been investigated. So that's a lot to digest. Happy to answer any questions about these studies. And I want to bring it back to Phish, because this is how it all started for me. This question, like, is Phish's music psychedelic? I like to point out that music is only one aspect of setting, which we're empirically testing in this research. Maybe Phish's music is psychedelic for some, but the full live audio plus the visual components plus the community and the experience live might resonate with an even wider audience and be psychedelic for people beyond just the music. I think it's something to consider. Also, naturalistic psychedelic experiences are extremely different from the standards of care required in psychedelic-assisted therapy and in clinical trials. Another really important distinction. So to wrap this up, I'd ask you to think about what songs or jams would you put on your Phish psychedelic playlist? What's the role of autobiographical salience with your relationship to Phish's music? And has Phish's music promoted mind expansion and spiritual growth for you? I know it has for me. I'd like to thank all of my collaborators at Hopkins and our funders, the Stephen Alexander Cohen Foundation, and I'd be happy to take any questions you have. Thank you so much for having me at this year's conference.
Thank you, David. We have just a few moments for questions. If anyone would, please come on.
Thanks. I was just curious if the participants have been tested, like had they experimented with psychedelics recreationally and had that affected the results, or were you looking for people that had no idea what they were walking into? If you can kind of touch on that piece a little bit.
Sure. So we haven't started the psychedelic piece yet. That protocol is in action. We're in the pilot phase, which is a non-drug phase. So it's a common conversation that we debate up and back about. If you have a naive population, that first you really don't know what you're going to get with that first experience. So we've been going up and back between whether we have people who have never experimented before or have light experimentation, maybe a couple of times recreationally. So like when they're coming into it, not as much as the shock factor that's really moving things, but that's an ongoing debate that we haven't totally decided on yet. Well, what we're definitely excluding like kind of people who have maybe like tripped like over 50 times something, because we feel like people with that much experience have really strong opinions about what they want to hear during the experience. So we lean on the side of less experience, whether it's totally naive or not. That's yet to be totally determined.
Hi, thanks so much. I know you can't see us, so I'll just say my name's Jay Cohen. I'm a musicologist, so I'm wondering about the whether you've used sort of existing musicological research on psychedelic music, like topics in psychedelic music. I'm thinking of William Eckhardt's book on psychedelic popular music and sort of how you define the psychedelic in music, because there's like a pretty well-established series of musical markers that scholars have used, but they are always very quick to say, oh, this isn't actually anything to do with the drugs. This is just a genre. But I think they're just saying that so that they're sort of protecting themselves like in the face of stigma. So I'm curious how you're selecting those things.
I think we're coming into this. It's funny. It's a conversation I was having last night as I was talking about giving this talk. It is. I take that stance. I think we're taking into this, like, there are musicological elements that make the genre of psychedelic music, and I think what we're really thinking about is how does music move the needle in terms of emotions and memory evoked during psychedelic experiences, and how does it affect and map onto psychedelic outcomes? Outcomes being surveys and behavior-based outcomes looking at the brain and physiology. So we're trying to go into this not predefining what is psychedelic, and rather, I think, more asking the question, how does different music affect the psychedelic experience?
Hey, David, this is RJ. I got a question coming at you from music theory and perception land.
Sure.
Your conversation about how you draw from or examine a diverse set of styles, which I saw listed like classic psychedelic rock, nature sounds, all those things. What struck me there is that not only are there diversity in style, but really timbre seems to be playing a really important part in how this music might be working or assisting the psychedelic. That was a great break. Might be assisting in the psychedelic experience. So I was just wanting to know and a little bit curious how timbre, or if timbre, is considered in these decisions, and if it does affect the psychedelic experience.
You're giving me chills, RJ. It's like I didn't even set that up. So timbre, what's crazy is that some in the past research, when music isn't autobiographically salient or personally relevant, timbre is tracked in the brain in like auditory cortex, where you track most of different timbre and other features of music too, in auditory cortex. But when you make it personally relevant, actually the timbral complexity is one of the features that jumped out of the music and was being mapped on by medial prefrontal cortex, and that's an area of the brain that's related to self-reference and self-memories. So it's like different areas of the brain are actually tracking these lower level features of music when it's tied to autobiographical salience. That might not have been exactly the question that you were asking, but in terms of screening the music for timbre ahead of time, it's not something we do. It's something we'll be looking at post hoc to see how different measures of timbre may or may not move the needle and interact with the other data points like brain activity that we're going to be examining.
That's absolutely fascinating. And just a quick kind of follow up on my own experience in thinking about this, the timbre can go all the way down to like the opening seconds of a show when you hear the crowd, like that immediate. It's not even, the music hasn't even started yet, but that the actual timbre of hearing the crowd roar and the cheer just transports you. And so that to me would also be an important part of the experience, right? If I was to create my own listening list for that experience, I would keep that crowd noise in there for those qualities or for those effects.
Yeah, it's like a signal. It's like your signal that it's starting, right? The lights go down. You have just a strong association with that moment. The lights go down. Everyone stands up. You hear the roar, and it's like, for Phish fans, like, it's on, right? The next note could be a sample, a 20-minute sample in the jar on song one, or you've no idea like what's coming. So those cues are important. Like because we don't have a Phish exclusive audience, we use like a meditation in the beginning of our session to try to just like get people to calm and breathe and be open to the music they're about to hear, because they may like it, they may not. We're not really sure. And one other thing before I wrap up about these conditions, what I think about personally is the journey that you're taking, either inward or outward. So a lot of the hypotheses I mentioned about autobiographically salient music, to me, that's a psychedelic journey inward. And when you look at other conditions like world music or nature sounds, to me that highlights the nature of connectedness and unity and like loss of self that is subjectively felt along with the psychedelic experience and may match that kind of journey of going outward and feeling more connected. So when I'm thinking about the music that we're testing and selecting, I'm trying to think more holistically about the journey at large and the fuller experience of like the main themes and takeaways and how that may impact kind of like where your mind goes.
That's great. Well, I think that's all we have time for, unless there are any final quick questions. No? All right. Please join me in thanking David.
Thanks so much for having me.
We're going to take just a quick moment for a set change. I'm going to flip the computer around here.
That's not me.
You're one of these three here.
Yeah. I'm in the back, yeah. There's me. And then the slideshow, right? From the beginning?
Yeah, go ahead and maximize.
Yeah. All right. So I just begin? No, he's going to introduce me.
All right. Our second presenter today is Radha Lewis. Dr. Lewis is a board-certified family physician with a focus on preventative medicine and holistic solutions to health-related problems. She has been providing primary care services to Bay Area patients for over 20 years. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Lewis.
Okay, can you hear me? Okay, great, thank you. Hello, my name is Radha Lewis. That was a very official entry point because my doctoring and my Phish have always been historically very separate, and there's a way in the last, 5 years, the whole thing has been merging into one identity. It's been kind of extraordinary. My name is Radha Lewis. I'm going to talk to you about the therapeutic power of music and membership in the Phish community. I'm going to describe an unbreakable net. It's being created by a group of about 200 women who've come together in an online forum with just two things in common: a decades-long deep love of Phish and a diagnosis of cancer. I am one of those women. This is my before and after. This is a very young me back at the lemon wheel. And then 26 years later, listening to Mountains in the Mist at the Sphere this spring. Like many of you, I'm a very committed Phish fan circa 1993 as a college freshman at the University of Michigan. I had the great pleasure of celebrating this last year my 30th anniversary show to the day. They came to my local venue in California on the very day of my 30th anniversary show. And then right after that, I had my 250th show at the most delightful party at Madison Square Garden on New Year's Eve. These are my other stats. I've also experienced 3 separate rounds of breast cancer. The first one was diagnosed in 2013, 1 week after the garden party, New Year's, which was my favorite until this last year. I was 38 years old. The word shock doesn't even begin to express how stunned I was when the diagnosis came, completely unexpected. 6 years later, at the age of 44, I was twice more diagnosed with cancer. This time it was in the other breast. So at that point, I decided it was probably time for a double mastectomy to prevent my breasts from doing further damage to my life. So I traded in all my tickets for the West Coast tour that summer, which was so painful, and instead booked a surgery date for July of 2018, which was terrible timing in terms of tour, but turned out to be excellent timing in that my surgery date was immediately preceded by the San Francisco Pride Parade. So I stripped off my top and I gave my boobs one last hurrah, you know? We strutted down Market Street 2 miles. Me and my girlfriends came, of course, imagining these huge cheering crowds were just for me. Help me say goodbye, you know? Parade aside, the whole experience was quite terrifying. It was very hard at 38 to be the only person I knew with a major health scare. And for me, there was the additional personal crisis of a definitive end to my fertility journey when it became clear it was inadvisable for me to get pregnant. So that New Year's, after all that brouhaha, was Mercury, and as I filed down the never-ending escalators after the show, I noticed this bald woman in front of me who looked as though she was in chemotherapy, and it suddenly occurred to me that I was probably not the only woman in Fishlandia grappling with a post-cancer self-identity and trying to figure that out. So the next day I got on Facebook and I started a group. It's called Phish, Chicks, and Cancer. Our first member actually joined later that day, and then there were 2 of us, you know. She died that year, 9 months later. Her name was Tiana Miller. I don't know if you know her. She was a Phish chick from Florida. Now, it's been 5.5 years that this group has been going on, and fortunately, and also unfortunately, we have about 206 members. We might have a few more since I've been here, and a moderately active discussion group. That's us. About 90% of our members have a personal experience of cancer, either newly diagnosed, undergoing treatment, or they're in remission. And the other 10% is made up of women who are caring for their family members. We come from all over the country. About 60%, I brought a pointer in case you can see it. There it is, see? Can you see it? Yeah. I see about 60% of people are in remission and 40% of people are in active treatment. And then you can see over here on the right side, about half of the people are in the first 2 years since their initial diagnosis. So it's a pretty fresh experience for a lot of people. It takes a long time to kind of figure it out, who you are. And so we have a lot of, it's just interesting group of folks. We have 14 kinds of cancer represented in the group, but it's mostly breast cancer, which is not surprising because this, by far, is the most commonly diagnosed female cancer in the U.S., especially among younger women. My favorite thing I learned, you know, I didn't know. When we started this idea of presenting, I really had no idea who the people were. And when I started asking questions, I suddenly realized that 85% of us have been in the Phish community for over 20 years. This is a group of longtime fans, the most of whom have been there since the early 90s. And I actually asked what year was your first show, and a third of the people had 1993, like me, be the year of their first show. But that's all we had in common. You know, this is otherwise pretty much a group of complete strangers. We recently asked the question, how many people have you met in person in the group? And over half of us hadn't met a single other member IRL, which really surprised me because there's really been a tremendous amount of generosity and intimacy in our shared space. And I want to just give you a little glimpse of that. I did get to meet a whole bunch of them because I have pink glasses and people recognize me at the shows. And it's no surprise considering our 2 shared attributes of loving Phish for a real long time and also having cancer. We all look like we've been friends for years, you know. I ran into one girl, I just started crying because she's been posting so much that year. This is the concept I've chosen to describe the solidarity I have experienced among this incredible group of women. Communitas is a concept defined by British cultural anthropologist Victor Turner to name what happens when a group of people have an experience of intense togetherness and shared humanity. It describes a state of heightened solidarity produced during a liminal moment, an in-between moment, likened to a rite of passage or moment of ritual. I suspect that many of us have had a personal experience of this as we've entered into the world of Phish. So many have a story of the night we turned on, a night we had our first experience. We were all together in the show, under the lights, inside the music, and it took us. There was an incontrovertible opening that night. And for better or worse, we were never the same again. I would say better. Going to a run also has been, I think, a quintessential liminal experience where for a few days time stands still. Our adult identities just go on hold, and the music brings all of us together. Getting cancer is another liminal moment in time. There was the person I was before I got that call, and there's the person I've slowly become after the cancer came for me. A cancer diagnosis has a huge psychosocial impact that causes a lot of emotional and physical disturbances. Some of these are more obvious, like anxiety, fatigue, depression, sleep disturbances, and others tend to be much less visible and quieter, such as difficulty with intimacy or adjusting to new kind of sexuality with a different set of hormones, or dealing with the ever-present fear of recurrence, or adjusting oneself to treatment-related cognitive impairment that can last quite a lot longer than the treatment itself. Breast cancer has been particularly well studied, as it's the most diagnosed cancer in the world and the most common female cancer in this country. Many articles have been written about the reduction in quality of life in younger women in particular, and the distinct psychosocial concerns that are unique to this group, such as a fear of recurrence that they must live with for a much longer lifespan. Younger cancer patients are also dealing with meaningful physical issues, such as those arising from premature menopause, treatment-induced infertility, and a permanently changed physical appearance at a young age. So originally, when I was thinking about how to describe and categorize our group for you, I thought it would fall within the domain of music therapy, and I interviewed some music therapists and quickly realized this was probably not entirely true. Music therapy is mostly a set of specific structured interventions. They're offered by certified therapists who have years of training and include things like live improvisation, drumming, songwriting, but also passive listening experiences to personally meaningful pieces of music. So we surely have a lot of those, but passive listening is just one small aspect of this healing modality. Music therapy has been pretty well studied. There's a Cochrane review, there's a lot of research on there, and it does have a large effect in reducing anxiety, improving depression, diminishing pain, increasing hope, and improving quality of life. Music therapy, it does help people healing with cancer. But I think that what we're doing is actually a lot more easily fall into the category of online support group. So then I asked the question, what do we know about online support groups? There is a little bit of research out there, and there is a Cochrane review looking at the well-run, peer-reviewed, published studies using experimental and control groups. It included almost 500 women, and it asked the question, do online support groups improve psychosocial outcomes? It's not a robust amount of data, but it seems so far the answer is no. Support groups online do not seem to improve quality of life or symptoms of depression in a meaningful way, although there may be a small effect in improving anxiety, but only if the group was led by a trained therapist. But I believe that this group, the Phish Chicks in Cancer, has been a useful and effective psychosocial support for its members. On one level, this has been a group of strangers meeting online for the first time, but there is a real communitas here where online cancer support intersects with Phish and peripherally with music therapy. I'm not the first one to talk about this today, but there is this background in our larger Phish community, a long history of making online connections from the earliest days of RMP. The Funky Bitches changed my life. You know, I joined when there were 20 people in there, and it just totally changed my whole world and kept me in this community. It's not surprising that what we found here, too, has been a very effective, I believe, my opinion, psychosocial support network. And so I want to show you a few samples of each of what I'm calling the threads that make up our unbreakable net. There is an immediate affinity and sense of trust among our members. There are meaningful connections for women who are going through the difficult process of diagnosis and early treatment. This place has become a very neutral place for people to talk about their real fears and concerns, and a place where women and one man, there's one man in there, women and one man are sharing palatable and I would say inspiring messages of positivity and hope. I'm going to show you a couple of them. And then there's this last thread, which I think is what holds the whole thing together. I call it holding the bad inside the good, because in this group we've gotten so many, countless women going through this terrible thing, which is a very sudden, unexpected, unpleasant new identity, and it's been softened as they've come in and held in this sort of shared landscape of Phish, where we found a lot of joy and meaning for a very long time. So, okay, now I'm going to show you some examples. I can just read them to you. You don't have to read them up there. It's a lot of words. Okay, so I'm starting on the right side. So these two comments on the right were made by women on the day of their arrival to this very large group of strangers where they knew no one. The top one says, "I'm navigating a diagnosis of breast cancer. Any advice? Welcome." The bottom one says, "Thanks for welcoming me. I was diagnosed on Monday. Keep me in your thoughts. I welcome any advice." And then this one on the left with the picture is from a member with breast cancer just 10 months after joining. She has not met a single person in the group. And this is her end of year message. "I'm feeling grateful for this group as we close out a year where all of you help me feel comfort and belonging." The next thread is meaningful connections during early diagnosis and treatment. I received my diagnosis yesterday. The shock and overwhelm is beyond words. I was wondering if there are any other chicks in my area, she's in Colorado, I could use a friend who's walked this path, and immediately someone came in and said, "I was diagnosed this week too, I live in Denver." So I checked in with them. These two have been cancer buddies ever since. It's been a while. They've never met. They talk all the time. These two Phish fans were diagnosed within a week of one another with the same rare breast cancer in the same breast. They met in the group. They they came in at the same time. They had identical treatment plans. They got their chemotherapy ports in the same week. They both chose cold capping. That's what you can see in the picture. They're doing cold capping during chemo to keep their hair. They have progressed side by side through chemo, surgery, radiation, and now they're doing, both of them, a second round of year-long chemotherapy. They check in all the time, these two. Okay, this one is a care package of cool Phish stuff. This one woman, a month out from her double mastectomy, sent to another woman who was just starting treatment, who had just joined the group. And she couldn't drive to the post office because after surgery, you're in bed for a while. And so she sent her 75-year-old dad to the post office to mail this care package off to this other newly diagnosed lady. So I called her last week to see, why she would do that, right? I was comatose after surgery. And she said it was just the opportunity she needed in the moment to cleanse her space. Support another Phish chick. Okay, another thread in the net is that it's been a mostly neutral environment. No one is trying to sell anything. No one is trying to convince anyone they need to eat raw, drink celery juice, or use Rick Simpson oil. And because of that, it's been a perfectly clean environment for women to talk about their fears and get 100% positive support and feedback. So I'm going to read the top one. "I'm sitting in the hospital after a lung resection. I found out my breast cancer's back and has spread. I'm devastated and so scared, planning for Vegas and Mondegreen to keep me going. We'll take all the love and good vibes you can send my way." And 24 people responded with messages of, "I understand, me too, you're not alone." The bottom one, "I went to the biopsy and it's not good. It doesn't sound like a great diagnosis. I'm still in shock. I need to know that I can recover from this. Please provide any positive messages." And 36 people she could relate to did just that. Which brings me to the next thread of our unbreakable net. This is one place where messages of hope and positivity ring true. There is no "you're going to be fine. It could be a lot worse. Everything happens for a reason." Don't say that. None of that. Toxic positivity. These are sincere moments of generously offered genuine hope that we can all relate to. This one on the right in the middle I rocked extra hard for all of you that couldn't make it this week, and I'm approaching 8 years out. I promise life does get better, way better. Keep fighting, keep your chin up, and you too will be on that dance floor soon. And then the top one, it's been 3 years since I rang the bell, but it's a never-ending journey. So thankful for the mental support this group provides. And then this bottom one I love, this just happened. So a woman joins the group just like, 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, and says, I was diagnosed with breast cancer last summer. I had my double mastectomy. Now I'm doing well. I had a hysterectomy and an oophorectomy. In the wintertime, that means taking out the uterus and ovaries. I still managed to make it to dicks. And then I got to the sphere. And this other lady, who's been in the group for ages, immediately responds and goes, thanks for being my inspiration today. My double mast is on Monday, and I've got my heart set on Bethel in August. There's something really special about this group of women dealing with cancer because it's held in the larger Phish community. That's the biggest thread in the unbreakable net. I call it holding the bad inside the good. This is a picture of a member on night one of Seattle who made fuck PH, PHUCK, cancer t-shirts for all her friends, and they all went, and she tore off her crazy wig during Fluff Head to go bald for the first time in public, and then she told us all about it, and she sent us pictures. This is a t-shirt that someone made for all her friends and then shared with the group. And this is a thread I have loved so much just recently. What song or lyric has meant a lot to you as you've gone through your cancer journey? It's good, right? The one on the bottom, that's mine. Velvet Sees My Song. I'm sorry, I'm up here. I have the mic. I love that song so much. It's just got so much gratitude and so much grace. I just love it. Okay, anyway. So that's our group, I call our little unbreakable net, and we're a group of mostly strangers, with only Phish and cancer in common, but I believe we've successfully come together to create a meaningful therapeutic online support group, and I wonder about other subgroups online of fans if they're having similar experience. Time Turns Elastic is one of them, Phish Hens is one of them. There's one for people with psychiatric disease. I just wonder if the same things are happening in these other groups, and maybe if we could start looking at it and start talking about it. And I because we're adults and adult things are happening to us now. We're not 20 anymore, and I wonder if this phenomenon is just unique to our Phish community, that we have this immediate affinity, or if it can be reproduced. The cosplay community, you know what I mean? The people who are into Dave Matthews Band, are these kind of groups, do they have the kind of affinity that we do? Could these kinds of subgroups be created and make online support group? Maybe this is the missing piece for making that a meaningful healing modality. So that's the question. I already mentioned Tiana Miller earlier, and I just want to close our time together by naming just in the last year or two the other 3 women from our group who are no longer with us. They might be friends of yours. This is Sarah. This is Pam. This is Colleen. If one of these women was a friend of yours, I'm very sorry for your loss. It was not that long ago. But all 3 of these women were a very bright part of the conversation while they were with us, and we're grateful for that. And to end on an optimistic note, this is a piece of art by Tabitha a couple years ago to celebrate her 1-year cancerversary. Mostly we're survivors, dancing our way to the next show. And I had a lot of help doing this. Heather McLaughlin, I don't know if you know her, she's in New Jersey. She just nailed the slides for me. And all these people were super helpful because I haven't done a presentation in a real long time since fellowship. And I wanted to give you some resources from the group that people have posted in there in case you have any friends with cancer. These are some pretty good ones. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Wow, Radha, thank you for that incredibly powerful presentation and conversation on the meaning of music and community and healing. Thank you, truly. We have about 7 minutes for questions.
I'm okay if there aren't any questions. You know, I can just sit down and we can just, you know what I mean, continue on. We started late anyway, unless there are burning questions. I don't need that. Oh, sure. Yeah, of course. Thanks. That's nice. Honestly, it's been a real gift for me. That's the truth. You know what I mean? I can't, and I've met so many lovely women, and I love, you know, I'm a doctor, so healing is my thing, you know, mine for me, and just being with other people while they're doing their work, and it has been such a tremendous gift. I had no idea it was going to go down like this. There's so much beautiful stuff happening there, and I just wish for everyone, you know, when they get a cancer diagnosis, to be received like that and loved like that, with the joy of the music and lightening up of the whole situation. You're not alone, you know, and that's what we need. Okay, thanks.
Nope. There it is.
As Chris is pulling up his presentation, give a little brief introduction. So our third presenter today is Chris Prince from Kennesaw State University. Chris Prince is an instructor of first-year composition English at Kennesaw State University. He follows the sounds of words and music wherever they may lead. His presentation today is Get Out of the Way, Free Writing to Improve Expression in Developing Writers. Please join me in welcoming Chris.
Thank you. Radha, again, that was beautiful. Thank you. And this whole thing, right, it's been amazing. The actual, I said it a couple times last night, this whole weekend's like a really long set break where and you're just meeting all like the right, beautiful, wonderful, smart people all the time. It's just the true definition of scholarship, I think. Alan Watts, in one of his old talks, reminded us that scholarship, we often forget what it means in education. The root word, schola, actually means leisure, right? Learning is meant to be fun and enjoyable. And in this age where so much joy is kind of being sucked out of the educational experience, this kind of thing going on is really inspiring. So yeah, this is great. Thanks for having me. I'm a writing instructor at Kennesaw State University. It's outside Atlanta, Georgia. And my job as a first-year writing instructor, as always, is to try to instill within my students a new, or at least renewed, confidence and comfort within their written voice. I am not at all looking for academically polished language in my classes, as much as I'm looking for authentic individual thought. Particularly with AI and everything coming up these days, that's just more important than ever. I want my students to be comfortable with their thoughts going onto a page. One particular effective technique that I've enjoyed since I was a writing student, and many of you may be familiar with it, is free writing. If you're not familiar, typically it's a timed exercise in which you just put the pen to the page and go. You try to get your stream of consciousness down onto the page as much as possible without neglecting as much as possible the urge to correct or revise or refine your work as you go. It's an attempt to spill that stream of consciousness onto the page and shaking out some moments of brilliance and inspiration. I usually present it as a cure-all for writer's block to my kids. Like, if you're ever stuck, just put it all out there, right, and see what happens. You're trying to grasp at the thoughts within you and put them down to establish a permanence out of the ephemeral. Now, renowned writing instructor Peter Elbow made me put it this way. He said, make some words, whatever they are, and grab hold of that line and reel in as hard as you can. Afterward, you can throw away the lousy beginnings and make new ones. This is the quickest way to get into good writing. It's the same concepts here, right, that we're looking at with improvisational music. And that's where our band comes in. This year I tried something different with my classes. I themed my entire English 1101 class around music that moves us. So everything that we did, everything that we wrote about, all the formative and summative stuff, right, it all was about our relationships and connections to music. In conceptualizing a diagnostic exercises for our first weeks, I came up with the Phree write, right, PH. And it made sense, right, for all these reasons that we've explored a lot, right? This is what Phish does. They are improvisationists, right? And they do that same thing, right? And it's the perfect soundtrack for this exercise. So, as I'm sure you're familiar, right, Trey referenced the hose. This idea that he referenced his experience with Carlos Santana. And Santana said that after listening to the guy's plays, he envisioned Phish as a hose spraying the audience, the flowers, with the water of music. Right? They were not the water, they are the hose. When we make art, we are not the art, we are the vessel through which the art flows. Right? And again, it's exactly what we're trying to do when we free write. The things are right there. Trey said the best thing you can do is get out of the way. Obviously, it's nothing new, and other people have explored, the roots of Phish's improvisation. The same spirit we find in Zappa and Coltrane, Sun Ra, Andre 3000's New Blue Sun, so many more jam artists, right? It's the Zambi of Colonel Bruce. And of course, in literary works, you see this in countless people, Kerouac, Eliot, Ginsberg, Kesey, Ellison, there's the flow, right? There it is. So I introduced these concepts to my students. Gave them some background on what free writing is meant to be. I provided some suggestions for writing emphasis, and I explained that anything was fair game. I added a little bit of insight to the band they were about to hear. I referenced, not everybody's going to like this, but but a lot of people do, and this band is really, you may never heard of them, but they're really popular, and they're successful, I promise. I included Trey's bit about getting out of the way, and that was kind of the mantra as they were writing, get out of your way, go, go, go. I gave them some options for how to write this, so there wasn't such a blank slate. I asked them they could do analysis as they went, right? Describe the music, describe your reaction to it. Is this good? Is this bad? Why? They could write narrative, right? If they just, what story do you think is going on with this music? What are you hearing? What are you envisioning? Where would the soundtrack to this be? Personal reflection, of course, too. They could just kind of journal and look into themselves and talk about their life, talk about their goals, talk about wherever, right? And again, I told them, they would be turning this in. I only expected at least a minimum of 300 words. I wanted them to keep going. Then I hit them with 29-minute entirety of Tweezer from Alpharetta. Even as you're listening, right? Try to focus on the language in your mind as you go through it, right? Sake of time. Sorry to interrupt that. Is that called pedaling? Sorry, for music people, was that pedaling that I just heard? I learned that term yesterday, so I wanted to, yeah. Now that tweezer, why that one? Proximity in time and space was important, right? This happened just a few months before, or a few weeks maybe, and it was close to us, right? It was close to where my classroom was. Tweezer, of course, was perfect for this because it has nonsensical, minimal lyrics. I didn't want lyrics to be too much of a distraction. I didn't want them focusing on the poetry of the language or anything, so it was fit there. Like all tweezers, of course, the range of moments and tones and the diversity of it all was wonderful. And again, it was also available on YouTube. They released this one, and that mattered, right? I risked the distraction element because I wanted them to see the guys doing this, right? I wanted them to see real people improvising in real time, Kuroda included, right? I wanted them to get that realness of it. My theory being, that there might be some kind of transitive property of creativity. They see these guys being bold and all this, then maybe I could be bold too, right? And plus it just looks cool and it's fun, right? So yeah, there it is. Now, the results of this were fantastic. I was very much surprised by all of this. Well, maybe not. It was cool. I thought it would be cool, and it was cool. So, yay. Kennesaw State is a huge school. We were like the third largest school in Georgia now. It's rapidly grown, and we have 7,000 first-year composition students, and we are a minority-majority school. So this is a really diverse group of kids that otherwise would not have even heard or listened to Phish in the first place, so they were perfect for this. I surveyed them after their writing experience, and again, 88% of them had never even heard of the band before. 12% had heard of them, but they didn't really listen to them. I only had one kid who had actually been to a show. He went to Huntsville like 2 weeks before. Hell of a first show to read the fucking book. But he was obviously stoked for this too. Now the cool thing here too, they rated their experience, their listening experience, and their writing experience. 85% of them reacted positively to the listening experience, and I'm counting the middle as positive, right? They didn't hate it, so that's good enough for me. Especially with teenagers, man. But then also 90% of them reported a positive writing experience, right? They enjoyed this process. They enjoyed writing in that moment, and they enjoyed writing is for an English teacher. Yeah, that's good. So I also asked some open reflection to this. Just tell me a little bit about your experience in this. And I'm just going to share a few. By the way, all the samples and everything else you see up here, they're all de-identified and they're all unedited. All right, so this is how they felt. The exercise took me on a euphoric journey. Writing this was definitely different than normal writing because I wasn't so focused on the topic. I was focused on just writing down what I was thinking while listening to the music. The writing experience was very helpful with clearing my mind. I was able to write a lot more than I thought I could. The music made me more focused and in tune with the words, if that makes sense. Yeah, it does. I feel the writing I produced was good. I could have written 10 times more if I had the time. I didn't want to stop writing when the timer went off, which surprised me. I didn't want to stop writing? What? Yes, that's awesome. Normally I don't do well listening to music while writing, but this really opened up my brain to word vomiting. I feel good about the writing I produced, and it felt authentic to who I am. Now, not all of them dug it, but they at least wrote something, right? It kind of put me on a whole rant about why I like fall and then horror movies, yet I still didn't like the song. It was weird. All right, now the writing samples themselves were fantastic. I'm going to share a few with you. This is a great analytic. Yeah, right. I can totally see the appeal of this kind of music, though. Oh my God, what's the piano doing? Why is the piano hitting random keys like that? Okay, it's back to normal, groovy. I hope the singer comes up with lyrics besides the tweezer freezer thing. Oh, now the cowbell is coming in. All right, go cowbell. This part of the song sounds like it's trying to figure out what it's supposed to be. I think that very thing was said on panels yesterday, like multiple times, right? Now the guitar is changing again. It sounds a bit like a slightly unorganized cacophony of sounds, as if the song just awoken from a deep slumber into a sunrise morning and is still stumbling over itself, but without any worry because this is its day off. Yes. Now the music is going into a cooler sounding direction again. This is quite funky indeed. I've been bopping my head to this every so often, I'll admit. I kind of forgot there was a guy singing earlier, but the music sounds good with or without vocals. Maybe you couldn't think of anything to say outside of tweezers and freezers. It's okay, vocalist. We all have those days. It's okay, Trey. It's all right. Here's a narrative. The kid just went off on this. It's great. I woke up with cryosleep earlier than I was supposed to. The rest of my crew are still sleeping, and our mission to return home has been thwarted by my curiosity. The ship we travel on is to discover new planets and new life. It would be a waste to travel into this new solar system and not investigate a message we receive from a new planet. I know I should not compromise the safety of my fellow crewmates. I know I can get home on my own. As I prepare to the escape pod to travel on my personal mission, I leave a message for my crew. My pod takes off from the main ship, and I see a new planet get closer and closer. The ship getting smaller and smaller in the distance takes its course back home while I prepare to enter this new planet's atmosphere. Pink clouds surround my pod, soaring through the orange sky as I descend lower and lower into the new world. Emerald mountains appear, covered in tall purple grass. Two suns illuminate a flowing waterfall that spews water on my pod as I descend lower and lower. Damn, right? I mean, and I know someone's had that go through their mind on a lawn before, you know, like it's just, and this kid never heard of Sci-Fi Soldier, right? They didn't have the context or anything else here. They just envisioned this journey, and it's just beautiful. Short, quick personal reflection. I think we put too much emphasis on figuring out why we are alive rather than living our lives. If you were to ask me what I believe our purpose as a race is, I would say we are here to understand rather than perceive. We scrutinize everything we see when we look in the mirror. You might not do your hair a certain way if it makes you happy because you nervously anticipate that a group of rowdy teenagers discussing your choice. Deep down, they care about someone else's opinion just as much as you. Beauty standards, expectations, and skin creams suffocate us. We can't age in peace for fear of looking older than we are. I don't know about you, but I would love to look like I lived a wonderfully long life. Damn. 19-year-old kid, man, just rocking it, right? So yeah, the results were fantastic. Where'd I go here now? Okay, wow. So round two, I had to do this again, right? Round two, we got into our argumentative unit, so I played around with the experiment a little bit, and I gave them a prompt, and it wasn't as free and open as the first one. It was more of a guided writing, I think would be the term. So this time I asked them, what is the purpose of music? Same rules. Sloppy writing. I expect to see sloppiness in there. Make it messy. That's good. But I asked them, what is the purpose of music? 300 words minimum. And I hit them with simple from Madison Square Garden because, you know, what is a band without a skyscraper, right? It felt perfect for this kind of thing here. Again, survey results, they loved it. This time the listening experience shot up, right? They were initiated a little bit, right? They had the tweezer thing. So yeah, we're now at 98%, right? Positive listening experience. These kids have never heard Phish before. Second time around, right into it, they loved it, right? Now, interestingly enough, because of the constraints of the prompt, the enjoyment of the writing process just slightly ticked down a little bit, which was interesting but cool. Again, I'll be quick with some of these. You really killed it with this one, Teach. I love this assignment because we're getting more into modern topics of music and its influence on society. This is definitely a needed topic as we all listen to music and it affects us, so we can really write passionately about it. I felt as if the writing I produced was definitely what I'm proud of. I had a lot of fun and interest in this topic, and I hope to see more like this. Another kid, doing a free write feels like getting a nice stretch in. I feel like my writing reflected my true inner thoughts, and I didn't feel worried about meeting any rubric or grading standard. Improv music just goes with the flow. So I think the exercise matches it nicely. Oh man, I get like the context, naiveness of these kids, but like they're hitting it anyway. It's wonderful. All right. Sake of time, I'm going to skip through some of the samples here. They were wonderful, and I'd be happy to share if anybody's curious. Now, round three, in the spring semester, I teach 1102, which is research focused and based. And I actually introduced the kids to this as like a model of my own research and what I do. And then I asked them to play along. But this one, I wanted some control elements to it, and I had the kids first write, it says Ted, they actually wrote 5 minutes, in silence, and let's just try this out first, all right? I introduced free writing, okay, go, right? And they wrote for 5 minutes. And then it's like, okay, and then I introduced them to Phish, and I introduced them to Trey, and then the Get Out of the Way and the Hose and all that. And I played them a 12-minute No Men in No Man's Land from Philadelphia. Again, also on YouTube and everything else. And I picked the shorter song, and I wanted to play around with lyrics too to see what happened there. And it went well again. Now this time, we had 87% positive listening experience and a 92% positive writing experience. 74% had never heard of Phish. A few more had, 16 had heard of them but hadn't listened to it before, and then 10% were familiar. And that was also a lot of my return students from the previous semester too. Now, again, there were some detractors. The lyric heaviness did cause some distraction for some kids. There were a few samples that talked about how they had the urge to stop and look up the lyrics while they were doing it. So, and of course, this was also more of a type 1 just groove jam. This one didn't go into weird, heavy places, and it was less exploratory. So I think that affected the writing a little bit. And I even had a few musician students. One kid commented he was kind of disappointed in the jam. He wasn't familiar with Phish, but I had set it up as like, this is improvisational. They do this, they're making this up as they go, and he was expecting something else. And he was like, oh, it's just kind of a groove. So yeah, I emailed him the Tweezer link, and I was like, yeah, check this one out. Okay, this is better. So yeah, it was just interesting to see those things, right? Again, great stuff on this, right? Writing to improvisational felt nice. Actually, a million ideas on what to write popped up in my head all at once. It promotes creative thinking for sure, right? Now, I did some analysis here with the samples that I had, particularly the ones written in silence versus the musical ones. And again, the numbers on the silent one, they're double them, but it's still close, right? On average, we had a total word count for the responses. In silence, they were 185 words. But with music, we hit 393. Even if you double that first one, right, they're still writing more. Unique word count. There was 111 unique words per sample in the first one, and 198 unique words in their writing with music. The difficult words, the site I used defined those as like it doesn't fit the most common 3,000 words. So again, but 81 difficult words per sample. The sentence length went up, right? So here I have this kind of, in the world of English and feely stuff right now, I have some actual data and some numbers that I can look to say, yes, when they write to music, to this music, they write better and more complex, with more complexity, and it's just cooler, right? Now, why does it work? Obviously, music's the shit, cool, yeah. But I think there's a couple things happening here, right? The physicality of expressing and experiencing music, I think, is a big part of it. Huberman Labs podcast, Andrew Huberman, points out how you're not only listening to the music coming through you, but your neurons and your cells and everything is actually reacting to it. Your body starts playing the music along with it. Even Cactus kind of chimed in on this. He was interviewed in a NPR piece on the wonder of music, and he was asked if he experiences wonder while playing music.
I definitely experience wonder while playing music on a regular basis.
Mike Gordon is the bass player for the band Phish.
It's almost like these neural pathways are opening, and it's almost like the air around me crystallizes, where everything around me is more itself. The notes, a couple hits of the snare drum, I developed this sort of hypersensitivity where it's now electrified.
And he suddenly, vividly remembers dreams.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there for time. But yeah, right? So there's something happening here. In a 2019 talk here, this one was great. If you haven't seen it, please go check it out. Dr. Stephen Reel, he broke down, it was called Breathing Deep in a Steam Dream, Structural Fog, Jouissance, and the Persistence of Groove in a split open in Meljam. And he defines structural fog as participatory discrepancies creating the pleasure by transgressing rhythmic norms, right? Again, this is a lot of what people have covered in here already. That jouissance, particularly, that pleasure and pain, the reaction, even if you don't, can't break it down like some of these other folks are doing, we feel that tension and we feel that release, right? It's almost physically similar to orgasm, right? It's a heightened sense of aliveness, right? So it's the perfect time and experience to write. When we're listening to music, it fills in the sensory, when we're writing, we're using our senses of sight and tangible touch, right? That's why it's difficult to write while you're watching a film or dancing, right? But music doesn't interrupt that, right? It can just support and fill and enrich that experience. It's wonderful, right? So I guess in short, right, we write to this kind of music because it's more practical and certainly more appropriate than writing while having sex. So yeah, there we have it. Our next steps, right? So what I'd really love to see with this, when I'm doing this in the future, I think some great cross-discipline study would be wonderful with this in music theory, even on an introductory level, like imagining, I think if a kid was more aware of what's happening musically, and with that complexity, right? Like then it could be, you could add that to your writing. It could influence the writing a little bit more. I was talking with Julie yesterday. She had a great chart, the flow chart of a jam right there, and I just envisioned like, okay, what if I took that chart and I modeled a poem, or I modeled an essay, or I modeled a story after this, what's happening in the releases and all this thing here. Really interested in seeing how even some incorporation of those things would work into this. Ultimately, I want to see more of this happening. I want to see more people using music in their classes, and this one too, if they're into it. Shout out to the Chalk Dust Torturers out there. This is a great group. I shared this when I was on that site, and a lot of them do this. They share this music because it's this like, it's so good. It means a lot to us, and we know this rich experience. And again, I think this work that I've done shows that even if kids aren't familiar with it, they get it. They pick up on it too, right? And as I'll circle back to what I mentioned at the beginning, school needs more joy in it. It needs more fun. It needs more silliness. It needs more loose, unexpected and improvisational happiness going on. And this kind of thing, I want to validate that more. I want to make sure that it's there so the teachers can, if they ever have a problem from admin because they got a 30-minute tweezer going on, no, this works. Like, yeah, I want to be able to do that because I want to make sure that we're introducing this to more kids so that we obviously and ultimately help produce more unique voices in their work. All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah. We have about 7 minutes for questions if anyone would like to come up. Oh, yeah.
In terms of the free writing, are they typing or actually writing by hand?
Mostly typing. Yeah, they have computers, and I had a few on their phones too, right? I mean,
Exactly.
A few handwrote because they just preferred it, and then they submitted pictures of their writing to me. But yeah, mostly typing, we click-clacking away in the room.
Yeah, that's great.
Which is cool because you kind of hear that rhythm of it too, right? There's like another sound to it. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I teach first year writing as well, and I bring this in, so we should talk about it.
Yeah, cool.
Thank
That's
you.
wonderful.
Hi.
Hi.
We met during set break last night.
It's still going, man. I wonder what they're going to play next.
This is maybe a silly question, but did you do the egg in a hole sandwich?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Because I would have loved
in
to
there
see
too.
the writing on that simple, man.
There were a few there, and again, like if they were going to do the analytic kind of thing, it wasn't. I got a few that were like reacted to the music specifically, and then there were a few like, what are they? Oh my, what are they? They keep yelling about eggs. What's going on? So yeah. That was.
I would have loved
one.
to read those.
It was a good one.
I had to ask.
Yeah.
Thanks for this. This is really, really cool.
Thanks,
and I kind of wish I had you as a teacher in grade school because all we got was like Enya when we were doing these sorts of exercises. And I wonder as you, this may be beyond like what your lab is able to do, but it would be really cool to see the level of activity as it courses through the gym. And it sounds like you can get to some of that because they're talking about it as they're free writing in response to the song's movements. But I do wonder if like it takes a little while to get in, or like certain movements create this creativity, because then you could use that to like see what other jams have those things in common.
Absolutely. I think those flows and those if you could timestamp the writing almost, like go along, like match them up and see like where did the syntax get really complex? Where did these quick rhythms influence some shorter sentences? Or, there's a ton there. And I think that's part of what I would really like to see with a lot of this study and this overlap. Because again, like I think we've said many times, the word intersectionality is thrown around a lot with this, right? This is all tied together, right? And in written expression for a new one, for whatever, like it's the same with dancing and music and all these. And so there is this creative push, and again, that's what I want most out of my students, right? It's a really cool idea, and one I'd love to explore more.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
I don't have a question so much as I wanted to say thank you. It's good to hear that teachers are using it on the college level. I taught minority and majority, I guess is the way you termed it, for 20 years. I have a Gaiuti lesson plan. Elizabeth Bex will reach out to me. I would love to share it with you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I'm really excited, and I'm going to implement some of the things that you've been doing in writing workshops too, so thank you, but I wanted to offer that up as well. The sixth graders particularly really dig it.
Oh, yeah, that's awesome.
Get them in early.
Get them young. Cool. Well, thank you guys again very much. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Chris. All right. As Leah is pulling up their slideshow here, I'll give a little bit of an introduction. Our final presenter in this session today is Dr. Leah Taylor, who is an integrative mental health coach and consultant. She is passionate about exploring mind, body, spirit practices that can therapeutically impact rising mental health conditions such as loneliness, depression, anxiety, and chronic stress. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Leah Taylor.
Thank you, everybody. I just need to figure out how to start this. Radha, I might need some help here, because you did so good. Oh, here we go. Okay. Actually, before I start, it's been a long session, and you guys are doing amazing, but if you would like to stand up for a moment, I invite you to just come up to your feet. Usually when I have a microphone in front of me, I'm teaching people movement. We're not going to do any of that, but I just move your body a little bit, do a little stretch, do a little wiggle, do a little shake. We're in the home stretch. We got 30 more minutes. And I just love for you to be as present as possible. And also, since we were talking about live music as a therapeutic modality, I'd love to just start with us taking and mind, body, spirit practice. I'd love for us to start by taking a few deep breaths together. So if you could indulge me in this, please. So go ahead and breathe in, reach up and out. And again, in and out. And one more time, breathing in and out. That just helps bring us all together. So thank you for that. And I'm just so excited to be part of this amazing panel. You guys are so amazing and smart, and thank you so much for everything that you're doing. So, all right. I am talking about live music as a therapeutic mind, body, spirit practice, and I'm going to be exploring the findings from my dissertation, which was entitled Well-Being Through Live Music, a Heuristic Exploration. I started my literature review in 2016. I started my research in 2017, and I have not presented this since my oral defense in 2018. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about this again. I will say my study was not specifically focused on Phish, but I had 8 co-researchers, which is what we call it in my methodology, and 3 of them were very big Phish fans. So, and 2 had Grateful Dead influences, and it's all related. Okay. The inspiration for my study, so I have extensive experience with live music, but I rarely acknowledged it as the transformative experience that it had been. It wasn't actually until one of the women who ended up being on my dissertation committee asked me the very important question as I was trying to figure out what in the heck am I going to study for my dissertation. She said, well, Leah, what has been one of the most transformative experiences for you in your life? And with tears in my eyes and a knowing in my heart that this was exactly what I had to focus on, I said, live music. And that's what led me to the study. Live music, I believe, is a mind-body-spirit practice. As I said, I've engaged in regularly since the age of 18. It was my first spiritual experience. It was my first time really feeling fully in my body, aligned body, mind, and spirit. It was the first time that I didn't have any thoughts going. I was just fully present and felt fully connected to everything around me. And I was like, I need to know more about this. So I had this implicit knowledge of its integrative effects from my own personal experience. And that led me to a master's degree in counseling, somatic psychology, and then a PhD in mind-body medicine. I had a burning desire to know more about the therapeutic implications of live music, and a curious researcher mind wondering if others experience the same transformative effects from live music that I have. So the importance to the field of integrative mental health, and this, of course, is still relevant today, and I updated some of these statistics. So isolation, anxiety, depression, and chronic stress are serious mental health concerns that need to be addressed with appropriate solutions people are willing to engage in. That's a very important point. So according to a 2024 poll by the American Psychiatric Association, 1 in 3 Americans reports feeling lonely at least once a week over the past year. In the same poll, 53% of adults reported that stress has the biggest impact on their mental health. And the APA in 2022 Stress in America report, around a third of adults reported that stress is completely overwhelming most days. That's huge. Anxiety levels are rising. Almost half of adults say they feel more anxious than they did in 2023. And according to the CDC, in 2020, 1 in 5 adults reported being diagnosed with depression at some point in their life. However, despite these statistics, only 24% of adults say they have talked to a mental health care professional in the past year. So the need is there, but people are not seeking help for mental health. And I'm trained as a therapist, but I'm also think that it's really important that we look at creative solutions that people are already engaging in and see what they are gaining from the solutions that they find meaningful. So there's a need for scientifically validated practices that promote health and well-being with minimal harmful side effects. Individuals are already engaging in activities that inherently move them towards health and wholeness. This is what I believe we do as human beings. Live music is one potential mind-body-spirit practice with positive health benefits. Some scholars have called, rituals including vocalization, music making, and movement the oldest form of religion, perhaps even medicine. And despite the history of music listening as a therapeutic activity and the prevalence of engagement, going to concerts is often perceived as something young people do or simply recreational. So I think it is very important for us to really look at what is happening here, what are the benefits, and maybe even how can we take those benefits to the mainstream and provide some benefit to people that is extremely cost effective because it can affect so many people at one time. This just goes back into, people are already using listening to music for stress reduction, and people are already going to concerts. And as an integrated practitioner, there is an opportunity to discover ways to increase awareness and consideration of this phenomenon to bring greater meaning and effectiveness to those who choose this self-care practice. So my study used the qualitative modality of heuristic inquiry, which was created by Clark Moustakis. And actually my research coordinator learned directly under Clark Moustakis. And so that was really cool. She unfortunately is no longer with us. Her name was Donna Rockwell. So the qualitative method, heuristic inquiry, is a qualitative method that begins with an experience uniquely relevant to the researcher that also has social and or universal meaning. So typically in research, the researcher has to put aside their experience, and when they're collecting data, they don't consider that. Heuristic inquiry actually allows you and encourages you to, most of the time, use your experience to inform the research, which is one of the reasons that if I'm going to be studying live music, there's no way I can't be unbiased in that. So it was great that I was able to actually utilize my implicit knowledge of the experience to inform the themes. So it involves processes of self-dialogue, self-discovery, and self-search as the researcher engages deeply with a particular phenomenon that feels essential to one's very being, which live music certainly does for me. It really has informed so much of my professional work and my life, as I know it has for you guys too. So in the study, there were 8 participants, male and female, between the ages of 18 to 65, recruited via text messages, email, and or social media. In heuristic inquiry, we call them co-researchers because I am also, part of the participant study. So inclusion criteria included just having attended at least one live music event that left a lasting impression. They participated in one virtual or in-person interview, depending on the location and or preference. And the main research question was, what is the lived experience of attending a live music event? And the interview questions included things such as, what is or has been your experience while being in the presence of live music? Please describe your first experience of being in the presence of live music that made a lasting impression. Have you attended multiple live music events offered by the same performer, band, or group of performers? And has being in the presence of live music affected any aspect of your life? What else would you like to add? So the interviews were really fun. I'm not going to go into painting the picture of each co-researcher just for time, but I will say, I think I may have mentioned this, that 3 of them were really into Phish, 2 had influences from the Grateful Dead. One actually, she liked live music. She had a great experience one time, but she hadn't seen a show in 5 years at the time of our interview. And then there was another young man who was a freshman in college, and he used to see live music with his dad and brother. It was like a bonding activity that they would engage in. But since he went to college on his own, he had seen like maybe one concert. So I'm curious to know what happened to him after that, because it's been a few years. So these are the results from my specific study. I found 3 themes. The first theme is that live music connects people deeply, interpersonally, so to other people, to performers, and also other audience members. Intrapersonally to oneself, they reported feeling grounded. They described things such as embodied awareness and self-authentication, which means that they just were able to actually learn and experience more about themselves and their values. And they connected with a safe, accepting environment. So I have a couple of quotes from a few researchers to just highlight these themes. This one is from Ariel. I can listen to my CD, but it's not like live music. So it's that connection. It's got to be that connection of seeing the band and feeling that music in person, because it's affecting you, and it's that vibration that mixes with yours. It's that whole mix and that whole flow and that whole interaction of the band and the audience and the connection that they're making. I think through the nature of making music, you make that connection with people. And this reminds me of Christopher Smalls, who's a musicologist. The phrase that he coined called musicking, where musicking is like a verb. It's something that's happening that we're all involved in, as opposed to music, which is, an object, a noun, like something that we actually go to see. And I think we can all agree that we are all part of the experience, part of the process, part of the creation of the thing. So 2 is that live music is a full body experience. It is visual, it is auditory, it is emotional, somatic, cognitive, and energetic. Some people described it as feeling overwhelming at times. And it evoked a sense of vitality that was both present before the show. So like as soon as people would think about going to the show, or they got their ticket, or they started talking about it, this sense of vitality started to rise. And it was present after the live music event as well. How far that dipped after, it really depended on the event itself and how long they kept thinking and talking about it, but it was still present after. And Jimmy said, it's just a look in your eyes, it's a smile on your face, it's a true emotional response, not like bobbing your head and I'm enjoying it a little. It's a true full body experience of having an emotional response that brings you so much joy you can't help cry or to smile or to scream out or to sing along at the top of your lungs. The enjoyment is pouring out of people when they truly experience those moments. Theme 3 is that live music can be transcendent, which really just means that it is beyond our ordinary everyday experience. They reported themes such as feeling a sense of oneness, a loss of time and space, themes of spirituality. The most common phrase that I heard from my co-researchers was that it is like church. I thought that was very interesting. They reported relics and artifacts such as collecting ticket stubs or confetti that was thrown at the show. Yes, wristbands. There's a ritual aspect to live music for many people. And then there was the theme of appreciation that I put under the transcendent. And this was appreciation for the musicians, gratitude in general, savoring the present moment, the emotion of awe, which is very important in positive psychology, noticing and valuing other people and what one has in life in general. And this sense of appreciation also extended beyond the live music event and even out of live music in general into appreciation for other cultures, food, and new experiences. So I thought that was really cool as well. Sydney says, it doesn't matter that I'm me or you are you. We're all just these balls of light floating around and doing stuff. It feels good. It's probably like being in the spirit world. Like you're not your body anymore. You're just a soul that's floating around, and it's just pure unconditional love and light. It's like what I imagine when people talk about when you die. Like that's what comes of your spirit. I feel like that's a sense of that. Like you're just light. Like, I'm not my body, I'm not the space, I'm not the glitter on my face or the outfit that I'm wearing, I'm just light. So, therapeutic implications based on the results. I'm going to tie this back to some research in my literature review, as well as the reasons, that I had for doing the study in the first place. So, for the first theme, live music connects people deeply. Their previous research also found that relationships are central to the experience of live music. Community is a large factor, and there is increased connection that is felt at live music. This could be useful for helping with loneliness, with stress, and with overall quality of life, because quality social connections are associated with higher quality of life. There's synchronized movement and increased bonding that happens at live music. So that includes themes of synchronization, entrainment, and self-other merging, which is a very cool concept or phenomenon that just really talks about how when we are with other people and specifically moving in time with others, there's this thing that happens where our sense of our physicality kind of blurs, and all of a sudden we're like one blob moving together. How many people have had that experience before? Yes. Well, do you know what's really cool about that? If there is no physical ending of me and you, and all of a sudden we are connected, that means that there is increased compassion and increased empathy that is happening, because we are not separate anymore. We are actually now one mass that is all moving together, which is very important. So it can deeply connect groups of people. It could enhance compassion between individuals and groups. And then also the self-authentication, which helps a person to understand their values and to live more authentically. For theme 2, live music as a full body experience, there's the emotional aspect. There were studies that showed emotional contagion. That means that you're feeling the same emotion that I'm feeling, we're feeling the same emotion that the musicians are feeling, which is really cool. And then also emotional arousal. We live in a culture that doesn't really like to feel our feelings. So anytime that we can be in a place where that is happening is really great, because we have to feel it to heal it. And music is beautiful because it can allow us to feel feelings that we need to feel in order to process. That could be sadness, anger, grief, whatever it is. And it can also allow us to feel feelings that we need to feel to shift into a more wanted feeling state, whether that's joy or love or pleasure or whatever. And we can all feel that at different times within the live music experience. Then there's the broaden and build theory of emotions by Barbara Fredrickson, which is really cool, that says that as we broaden our experience of emotional experience, it helps us to build our emotional resilience, which creates resilience that helps us to face challenges in the outer world. Then there's also peak experiences, which there were quite a few studies that talked about that. And peak experiences are considered transformative experiences, which create a lot of meaning for people in their life. In the somatic aspect, there was a new meta-study actually that just came out at the beginning of this year. I believe it was from Australia. And it showed that dance is better for reducing depression than other interventions. And those other interventions included things such as antidepressants as well as therapy. So I thought that was also really cool. And then, of course, there were findings of one study that showed that there was a reduction of stress and immune function with live music as well. There's not a whole lot of research. I didn't mention this before, but this was kind of the gaps in the literature that I was noticing when I was doing my lit review before my study. There's a ton of research on music, but where the gap is the therapeutic, what people are actually receiving from being a listener or receiver of the music. There's a lot of research on musicians and the benefit that they're receiving from actually creating the music, but there's not a lot from the audience perspective. And when it does look at the audience, it's really looking at what are the motives for people that go to music so that, they can find out how to be more profitable in that. But there is need for looking at the therapeutic implications of it. So with the cognitive, live music has been shown to induce a trance state as well as flow. Both of these experiences can reduce the default mode network, which is kind of like our resting state in our brain. And that is oftentimes where rumination comes from. So when we're like really thinking about the past and we just mull it over and over and over, it's also really where worry comes from, worrying about the future. And both of those can be associated with depression and, of course, worry with anxiety. And then the energetic aspect, these two studies found that vitality within oneself and the environment was experienced in live music. So theme 3, live music can be transcendent. Bringing meaning to life was an important aspect of general music listening for older adults. Performers and live music listeners found the music to be transcendent. There was an aspect of spirituality. Other studies showed that live music was deemed like church. And then my study was actually the first qualitative study to find appreciation as a core aspect of transcendence with live music. As I mentioned, that was shown to extend beyond the live music event. And appreciation can add to connectedness with others, and it can also increase an individual's experience of happiness. So all of this, of course, is related to kind of the mental health concerns that I was talking about in the beginning. So I like to use my own pictures. I didn't mention that the first picture was from Phish at the Greek Theater in April last year. This is from MSG 12/31/17. How many of you were there? Yeah, the Soul Planet Ocean of Love. So I was not at New Year's this past year. I was not at the Sphere. So this was the image that I wanted to show, because it really shows us, in this sense of oneness, right? We're all creating this ocean of love. So implications for future research. The research is still needed. This has not changed. Attachment disorders or relational trauma, I really think that I have this hypothesis that live music could really help with attachment disorders or relational trauma, mainly because it is a non-threatening environment that creates deep social connections, and attachment disorders and relational trauma has to be healed through another person. And most people with attachment disorders or relational trauma have a lot of defenses around other people, right? So when we have this experience that automatically lowers those defenses and deeply connects other people, I think that there is merit to look at what that could mean for helping with those. And then there was also another study with Lady Gaga fans that showed Lady Gaga as like a surrogate mom to her little monsters, the fans. And of course, that's really cool too, because that can help to heal those attachment wounds, because you need another mother figure, whether it's yourself remothering you, or another person that can really help to provide that attachment that you didn't receive from your childhood. So other implications are live music as a potential treatment for chronic pain. I've worked in the field of chronic pain for the past 5 years. There's a lot of isolation, loneliness, anxiety, depression that happens in chronic pain. So I'd be curious what it is like for chronic pain patients. Creating safe live music environments for all fans, because it is really the safety that the level of safety helps with the level of effectiveness of these therapeutic effects. So when we can create a safe environment for everyone, it's going to increase the amount of effectiveness and the things that I found to be true. Effectiveness of live music and movement integrated modalities such as embodied groove, which is the live music movement modality that I have created, mostly based on my understanding of integrated mental health as well as the live music experience, moving and grooving to primarily the music of Phish since I was 19. So brain waves and live music, are we in more of a suggestible state where we can gain access to subconscious belief patterns, and can that be used to repattern old belief systems? I'm really curious about lyrics and lyrics in our suggestible states. What is that doing? I don't know. Measuring heart rate variability at live music as an indicator of brain-heart coherence. Heart rate variability is also a measure of high health, and they have heart mass sensors that one can wear and, measure that coherence. So I'd love to see a study looking at that. The effects of amplified music on the human biofield, which just means our energy field around us. Live music is sound therapy. What is happening there? And the phenomenon of group flow on compassion between members. So in conclusion, live music engagement is a mind-body-spirit practice that can be beneficial to overall health and well-being. Attending live music could have potential benefits to mental health conditions such as loneliness, isolation, depression, and chronic stress. Positive effects last beyond the live music event. It can affect many people at one time, being a cost-effective mental health intervention. We don't have to get people's buy-in like therapy, they're already doing it. And there appear to be minimal side effects. Hearing loss is one of them, but that's why we need good earplugs. And all of the work that everybody is doing, to really help to create a safe environment for everybody, that's also really important too. I thought that this quote, this is from Trey at the CBS Saturday morning, the interview that he did before the Sphere shows. So I think that Phish is a place where everyone is welcome in a rough world, mean world, where you can come hopefully and be accepted and just enter into this community that's really kind, smart, adventurous. That makes me very happy in this world today. Maybe it's a teeny little thing, maybe it's not a big deal, but I feel like it's some kind of service. I think all four of us think that, and after all these years, we're happy about that. Yes, thank you. So I have lots of references here. And then if anybody has questions and you want to contact me directly, I have a lot of people that ask me for my dissertation. I'm happy to send it to you. These are a couple ways that you can get in touch with me. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Leah.
Yeah.
We have about 7 minutes for questions. Oh.
Hey, Leah.
Hi.
That was awesome. Thank you.
You're so
and
welcome.
This whole panel was amazing.
Agreed.
So my question might actually end up being something that a few of you could answer, maybe. So what you're talking about, to me, I don't know if you would agree with this, but complementary practices, alternative practices, we think about traditional Western medicine. I love what you're talking about, but as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, what's the likelihood that something like this could be adopted in more of a bigger, broader way? And I'm wondering your thoughts on that, and how we might be able to get something like this to be available or even just thought of as an option.
Yeah, and that's really where the integrative comes in, right? Because when we talk about integrative medicine, we're talking about, combining like Western medicine with alternative medicine. And yeah, that question has been on my mind too, because, how many of you have experienced the therapeutic effect from Phish? Yeah. And how many of you consider it kind of your part of your self-care practice? Yes, right? So this is already happening. And mainly for musicians, I think it's really important for us to highlight their role that they are providing for people, because they are primarily seen as recreational or as, I'll just spend my money on that when I have some extra or some leftover, or, how many times have we had, you're going to another show, or concert, as people would say. It's like, why? Why aren't you doing whatever? So I think it's really, when we think about the fact that music and movement have been used as the oldest medicines since the beginning of time, it's like we really need to think about bringing them back. And I think of creating community events that people can come to, where it can really be free or cost effective for so many people to come and in community to celebrate life, but also to grieve and to, honor things that are happening in people's lives in a way that we did so long ago and has really been taken away from us. But we are called to it. And, I think there's a reason, researchers try to find out, why has music survived so over so much time and through so many cultures? There's really no life reason. It's not like food or water or sex or anything that we have to do to continue life. But I believe for us, it's soul medicine. If we didn't have it, our souls would begin to wither and die. So, but you can't really measure that yet. So, yeah, I think creating opportunities for communities to come together and as adjuncts to other things that people are doing is really important, to have grants or whatever needs to happen to make this happen. Yeah. Hi.
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 I'm a psychotherapist in New York, and I actually used Moustakis to talk about Phish in the 2019 conference.
Awesome.
And something that I was curious about, at that point I wasn't practicing, I started my practice shortly thereafter, but how the experience of live music is akin to therapy. And I was wondering, from your perspective as a practitioner, what are the kind of tenets of your practice that you see as being somewhat similar to kind of what we all raised our hands about in terms of how does Phish have a therapeutic value for us?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I think it really helps to bring meaning to one's life and experience, and that's something that's happening in the therapeutic container. Also, the relational aspect of the therapeutic container is extremely important too. Maybe lots more important than the interventions that are being used. How safe and accepted do you feel from the person on the other side? And also, I love the authentication of the really coming into a sense of, well, what are my values? And that was really found in that research. It's all of a sudden, the things that we have, all of the accolades that we've tried to acquire, like, it doesn't matter anymore. It's just like, I'm here and you're here and we're having this amazing experience, and maybe we're in this beautiful environment, and so we're really appreciating the sense of nature as well, and all of that kind of falls away. And I like to think that that happens in therapy as well, where it's like, okay, let's get down to the heart of what really matters, and let me see you as who you authentically are, as opposed to like all of these layers that we, tend to put up as we walk through life and try to navigate other people. Yeah, so hopefully that answers that question. Great. Yeah.
So is it on? There we go. I remember reading about children who were had experienced such severe trauma that they were nonverbal up to the age of 7, 8, 9, 10, and how immersive, colorful, tactile environments like ball pits and bouncy houses are often really therapeutic for them and can help them move forward and verbalize and things like that. Soft foam, things like that. And I remember reading about that and thinking, oh, that was my first show. That was 11/28/97. Extremely immersive, extremely visual, extremely tactile. I'm wondering a little bit in particular about how visuals engage with live music therapy, multi-sensory elements, and the ways in which we listen to a show and it's in our ears, but we go to a show and it's much more multi-sensory, and what the therapy of that is.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't really know the answer to that. But there is definitely research that has been shown for music with nonverbal people and how helpful it can be. And I don't know the statistics on that either, so I'm not a lot of help to your question. I apologize. But the multisensory experience of music, I can tell you from a pain perspective, could help, and this is why I'm interested in seeing what it could do with pain, because when there is so much sensory experience coming in, it could help to block the pain receptors. So that's as close as I've got to that. If anybody else has anything to add. No? Okay.
Hi, I am a clinician at a women's residential treatment center for substance use disorders. I run a process group in addition to art therapy, and I incorporate a music listening portion at the beginning of the group, and the women can choose a song that's important to them in their recovery at that moment. And I'm just wondering if any of your research has included smaller scale music listening as community building and like trust building, because it's definitely what I witness. And I would like that to be sort of validated,
Yeah.
if you know of research like that.
None that comes to mind, but I know I think you should do it. I think there's a need for it. Yeah. And I also just want to say, I mean, from my own personal and professional experience and just being seen and validated in something that's really important and authentic to the person, that can be so healing, because I think most of us don't even realize what a need there is for us to be like really truly seen by another person. And I've experienced that myself in my own really dance practice, where I got to pick a piece of music that was important to me, and then I danced it in front of, women who were holding the safe circle around me. And the first time that ever happened, I mean, it just like blew me away of how transformative it was. And that's what made me really realize, like, gosh, that was so healing, and I didn't even know that I needed it. But just to be seen in me, and of course, when a piece of music that comes on that's like you love to dance to, it's like you are so lit up or has particular meaning for you. It's like, oh, this is me. And then to be seen as me by other people in a safe space that are like looking at you with loving and compassionate eyes, like it's really, really healing. Yeah, so good work.
Well, if there are no more questions, let's carry on to lunch. Please join me in thanking Leah, Radha, Chris, and Dave for their awesome work.